welcome everyone as everyone's coming in. Um, Super excited to start off the Venture in the Capital Summit here at Georgetown with a virtual conversation with Zach Dell. Zach graduated from USC in 2019, where he founded Sqwatt, and he later transitioned to private equity at Blackstone and later served as investor at Thrive Capital. Zach set out to build out the modern power company of the electric era when he co-founded Base Power Company in 2023. Today, Base Power has raised $1.2 billion and deployed over 100 megawatt hours of battery capacity across Texas. With a battery manufacturing facility rising in Austin and thousands of home installations statewide, the company is proving that the power grid of the future doesn't need to be centralized. It can be owned by the people who use it. So, welcome to our guest, Zach Dell.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks for coming, Zach. So, just to start off, um, what would you say? I mean, what's the simplest way to describe what Base does to someone who's never really thought about where their electricity comes from?
So at the system level, what we're building is really a distributed power plant. That's the way to think about it. But for the customer, what we are offering is a power company that is more affordable and more reliable. So the way that works is we install a battery on your home. When the grid is up and running, we use that battery to support the power grid. When the grid is down, you get that battery to back up your home. We pay for the battery, we design it, manufacture it, install it, own and operate it. And as a result, you get it for a fraction of the cost of a home generator or a home battery that you might otherwise have to pay for. And because we're your power company, we're also selling you electricity. So we are able to save you on the order of 10 to 20% a month on your electricity bill. So the customer is really getting affordable and reliable power. So they're saving 10, 20% a month. And when the grid goes out, they still have power at their home provided by the battery. Now, quick clarification, which I think is important for people who don't live in a part of the country where the energy market is deregulated. They think, well, in California, I have PG&E, or in New York, I have Con Ed, or in Florida, I have Florida Power and Light. Well, 75% of the country is regulated. So it's a market where there's no choice. You have one provider, and that's your electricity company. 25% of the country, Texas being the largest state, but also Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Connecticut, parts of New York, and parts of New Jersey are deregulated to your choice of electricity supplier. So we today operate exclusively in those deregulated parts of the market where you choose Base as your provider. Like I said, we come put that battery on your home and we serve you electricity. We are starting to enter the regulated markets as well, where we partner with those regulated utilities and we sell them our technology to go deploy in their service territory. And we can discuss that more if you want, but that's how it works.
Sure, that's such a unique product. I wanted to ask I mean, you began your career at Blackstone, Thrive Capital before starting Base. Now that you're on the other side as a founder, right? What would you say really makes a good value add venture capital firm?
Well, I think it really depends by company. I think there are different ways to be valuable. One friend of mine used to joke that the best value that investors could provide was they give you money, and that's pretty valuable. Actually, a partner that is flexible and kind of understands the ups and downs of company building, is able to move quickly, doesn't really get in your way. Believe it or not, that is better than most of them. Because look, when you invest capital on behalf of someone else, which most of these venture funds do, they're quite protective of that capital and they want to, restrict you and they want to ask for things all the time. And so just having a partner that is, company friendly and supportive and understands the ups and downs of company building, like that itself is very valuable. And then if you can bring someone around the table, which we've been able to do at Base, that people who have built companies before, that have seen the problems that you're seeing before, they can help you see around corners. They can help you not step in those potholes that maybe they've stepped in before. And so we've got investors like Antonio Gracias and Lee Fixel on our board, who, Antonio was on the board of SpaceX and Tesla, and Lee was on the board of Postmates and Peloton and Flipkart, Harry's, Warby Parker. And so these guys have built companies. They built consumer brands, they built hardware companies, they've built software companies and everything in between. And they understand what kind of problems we may be facing, and they can actually really help us solve those problems technically. But most importantly, they're just very founder friendly, they're company friendly, and they're really putting the company's best interest first. And that's what's most important.
I love hearing that. Was there anything you say you really had to unlearn going from, I mean, being an investor to a founder?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was lucky because I had a bit of a stair step into it from Blackstone to Thrive to starting the company. Because Thrive was a bit of a middle ground in what I'm about to say, which is that when you're at a place like Blackstone, or we were talking before the call kicked off about the banking programs and working at a place like Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley or JP Morgan or other private equity firms, it's incredibly structured and it's obvious what good looks like. You show up and you can go look to the best analyst or the best associate and you say, okay, well, if I do those three things or these four things, I'm going to do really well. And if I don't, I'm going to do poorly. Every day you show up at work, you know exactly what to do. Your boss tells you what to do, who is told what to do by their boss's boss, who's told what to do by their boss's boss's boss. And it's very clear. Starting a company is the exact opposite. You have a very kind of crazy big goal that's really far out, and it's incredibly foggy what the steps are between you and that goal. And you have to go figure out what to do next. And it's really easy to get stuck in analysis paralysis or letting good or great be the enemy of good, or use whatever kind of metaphor or figure of speech you want to use. It's really easy to just get lost in the, oh, I feel like I'm making progress and I'm actually not. And you have to go from like a world where everyone's telling you what to do and it's very clear to no one is telling you what to do and it's totally unclear and you have to go figure it out for yourself. That is the biggest thing, is just being comfortable with that level of obscurity. And being able to actually put one foot in front of the other and make real progress and then hold yourself accountable because no one else will.
Well, it's been incredible to see your growth. I wanted to ask, I mean, in a podcast, you mentioned that base really embodies this, I mean, this chop wood, carry water culture. When you are interviewing candidates, right, how do you actually determine if someone has, say, a quote unquote dog factor?
Yeah, look, I'll say a couple things. One is uh, we are a pretty intense culture. We don't do remote work. Remote work. We all work here in the office. We think remote work is fake work. And if you want to be on our team, you've got to move to Austin and get your butt in the office. When we interview people, we tell them that this will be the hardest job you've ever had. And the reality is, the people who do best here are the people who are looking to be challenged, are looking to be pushed. They want to do the best work of their career. They want to work with the smartest people they've ever been around. And when they get here, they do well because that's what they're looking for. The people who don't do well here are looking to, hide or coast or, join a high-flying company and just be along for the ride. And we sniff that out really quickly and they're gone. And we have no tolerance for that. But to answer your question specifically, in the interview process, I will share that. And look, I did at the end of the interview, and it's like, hey, just want an expectation set. Like, this is going to be incredibly hard. By the way, it's not a sweatshop, right? It's not like, hey, you got to be here till 2 in the morning because, I was and the person below me, like, that's not how it works at all. It is a kind of all in, high ownership, tons of responsibility. Here's your job, get it done. And if you don't, you're accountable. That's more the culture that I'm talking about. But to answer your question, in the interview process, we often ask people to tell us about the hardest technical problem that they've solved or to tell us about the thing that they've done that they're most proud of. And what I found is that people who are, maybe don't have the dog in them, to use your terminology, they will say the word we a lot. So they'll say, oh, we did this or we did that, and my team did this. And I'll interrupt them and say, no, Spencer, what did you do? What was your contribution? And if they give you more we and they give you more high level, no, 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 like, what was a specific thing that you did? Like, okay, no, when you showed up at the office, you opened your computer, your hands are on the keys. What are the buttons that you press? Like, what is it? And you kind of get them, tie them down to the atomic unit of like, what is the actual thing that they did? And if they can't articulate what it was that they did, how they were directly involved and responsible, it's clear that they're not a high ownership person, or at least it is an indication of that.
That's very interesting. So, I mean, just on another side note, I mean, you met your co-founder, Justin, on a factory tour, and you mentioned you immediately knew, I mean, he was the one, right? So, what did you specifically see in him that made you certain you wanted to partner with him?
Yeah, well, it wasn't necessarily like love at first sight where I, laid eyes on him and I knew, but it was kind of over a course of a couple of days. So I met him. We spent 12 hours together touring the factory, and I did a little bit of this on the tour, right? I'm like, hey, well, how does this subsystem work, and why do you guys make it in this way, and why is this the thing that the customer wants? And then you go like, well, why, and you kind of take it down, down, down. And he could go all the way to the atomic unit, right? He could go all the way down to the core insight of the thing, and that was a very obvious example of like this guy has extreme domain expertise. But then I think as I got to know him over the coming days and weeks, it was obvious that we had extremely complementary skill sets. He's very technical, very operational. My background is more strategic and commercial and financial. And it was just very clear that we, spoke the same language, kind of saw the world in the same way, cared about the same kinds of things, had similar values. I wish I could give you a crisper, like, oh, well, when he said this and I saw this, I just knew that it was right. But it is a process, and there was a bit of a kind of dating concept here where we met on that day and then we stayed in touch and we talked on the phone a bunch and we would text all the time. And then, we would start having more frequent phone calls, and then I would go see him in LA and he would come see me in New York, and then we met in Austin and we spent a week together. So there was about a 6 month process of getting to know each other quite well before we started the company together.
That's great. I mean, so Justin was at Onderil, right? So my question is from that, how do you convince people who've led major parts, I mean, of SpaceX, Onderil, these really fast growing companies to join Base so early?
Yeah, I think it's quite simple. The best people want to work on the most interesting problems at the most interesting companies. And if you're not working on one of the most interesting problems and you're not building one of the most interesting companies, they're not going to join you. But if you are, you've got something special. And look, I think that energy is the last great industry that's gone undisrupted. It is the largest, most interesting, most complicated part of the economy, and there's no engineering-led, technology-driven R&D focused company in the category, and we are building the first. And if you can articulate that mission, vision, and strategy very clearly, then it doesn't matter where these people come from. Look, I'm biased, but I think what we're doing is the most interesting thing in the world. I think we have the opportunity to build one of the biggest companies on the planet, if not the biggest company on the planet. And we put a lot of work in the early days into articulating that very well. So I'll just give you some details. We wrote a memo, 10 pages, very detailed in the very early days of top to bottom, this kind of like intellectually complete, why this is going to work, how we're going to do it, what the steps are, what the system level impacts will be, why things like this have failed in the past. And we would, share that around and get that in front of people. And early hires say, hey, read this memo, tell us what you think, give us your feedback. And then, actually, when we started this, I did this every 2 weeks. Now I do it every month, still to this day. I write a monthly update. Like I said, it used to be every 2 weeks. And it was, what was happening at the company? What problems were we solving? What were we working on? What was our next milestone? And every month I write these updates. And I still, to this day, in fact, I'm going to have to write the January one in the next couple of days here. And whenever we meet a candidate, so let's say, Spencer, you're, head of XYZ at Tesla, and we're, 15 people trying to get you to join. You and I meet, I explain the mission, vision, strategy to you. I get you excited. I'm like, look, I'm going to send you some stuff to read. And this is a good old-fashioned nerd snipe, as the kids would say, right? So and then I send you the memo, and I send you our last 3 monthly updates. And you read the memo, and you're like, wow, this is really interesting. You read the update, you have some thoughts. I say, hey, give me a call if you have any questions. You have some questions, you call me. We nerd out for an hour or two. We talk about it. It's very hands-on, right? So like you have to be able, like, you need to be working on something that really matters and can be really big. And then B, you have to be able to articulate that very well. And then C, you have to be willing to put in the time with the person to actually go back and forth to, like, set the hook, if you will, to use a fishing reference, with the candidate. And then, you're off to the races.
Most definitely. With regards to being Base, right, being a hardware company, building a modern hardware company, I mean, that's inherently contrarian. I mean, especially when you think about, I mean, the ease of building software, right? Having that high propensity for recurring revenue, having high marginal costs, et cetera. So why did you decide to build hardware?
Well, I didn't really look at like a decision matrix and say, okay, well, hardware and software, and I'm going to do hardware. I approach it from a different perspective, which was mission orientation and focus on the problem, which was, okay, I want to put a dent in the universe. I want to build a company to solve a problem that, if solved, will move humanity forward. And where are the interesting paradigm shifts occurring? And I think this is an important point. Like, all of the great companies in history, they're built around some kind of paradigm shift, right? Whether it's the internet or mobile or AI or electrification in our case, like, you need to find a wave to surf. And I was kind of looking for that wave. And when I was your age, I went and worked at Blackstone out of college, and that was in 2019, 2020, and crypto was the wave, right? And everyone was talking about crypto, and I just didn't, that wave didn't totally resonate with me. And it didn't, it didn't grab a hold of me. It wasn't like, oh, this is the thing I need to go work on. And when I was at Blackstone, I saw a new wave, which was batteries and solar becoming the dominant source of energy generation in the world. And the way I'd articulate this is the last 5 decades of energy have been dominated by coal and natural gas. And energy is all about marginal cost, right? Whatever the lowest way to create a watt, the lowest marginal cost way to generate electricity, that will dominate the industry. And so for a long time, it was coal. And then for a long time, it was natural gas and is now switching for the first time in decades. And I think the rest of human history, it will be solar and storage. I think that the sun is the greatest source of energy in the world in the solar system definitionally, and our ability to harness that will change humanity forever. And until 2021, 2022, 2023, the business models around solar and storage didn't really work because we weren't at the right part of the cost curves. And when I was at Blackstone, I worked on a deal to carve out a lithium mine from a public company. And if you're going to do that, you have to go model what's going to happen to the price of lithium. And in doing that, I kind of followed the lithium thread to the battery thread, and then it hit me. I was like, oh, wow, the marginal cost of solar and storage is going to go below the marginal cost of coal and natural gas. This is going to change the industry. This is the paradigm shift I'm looking for. No one is building the energy platform company around this new paradigm. If you go look at all the energy tech companies, the platform companies, they call them the energy majors, as they're called, NRG, Vistra, Constellation in the US, Engie in France, Iberdrola in Spain, Origin in Australia, Tokyo Electric in Japan. They're all over the world. They're all oriented around coal and natural gas. Some of them are dipping their toes into solar and battery, but they're not built around that. And it became obvious to me that there was a chance to do to energy what SpaceX did to aerospace, what Anduril did to defense, what Tesla did to autos around this paradigm shift. And that is how I decided to go after it. So hardware is more of just like a play the game on the field. And it was more of a top down, like, where can I put it in the universe? What are the hard problems that we need to solve? What are the paradigm shifts that are happening in my lifetime? And then, okay, let's get to work. What do you need to do? Well, we need to build batteries. We got to design them. We got to install them, operate them. And I tell you, like, yes, it's a hardware business, but it's also a software business. It's also a financing business, a policy business, an operations business, a brand consumer building business, or brand building consumer business. So that's what's so fun about it. It's this complex coordination, kind of vertically integrated machine. We have to be good at a lot of things at once. And that was more something that we realized, not something that we went in looking for. Because if we went in looking for that, we'd be totally insane. Because
Yes.
it's incredibly difficult, but that makes it really fun and rewarding.
Well, I love the mission behind it. Customers, I mean, generally have, I would say, a negative perception of their utility companies. I mean, whether it be, I mean, poor electricity that's super inconsistent or having those high costs and they consistently raise them on them. How does Base, I mean, confront this to really build a product that customers love?
Yeah, I see this as a huge opportunity. You nailed it. Like, no one has ever said, "Oh man, I love my power company," right? Like, that's just not something you ever hear. And we have the opportunity to change that for the first time ever, and that is super exciting to me. And our whole business is built around power that is more affordable and more reliable. And I don't know about you, but for me, like, when it comes to power, that's really all I care about. I want it to be affordable and reliable. I want my bills to stay low and I want my lights to stay on. And outside of that, like, that's really all that matters. And so our entire business is oriented around, the strategy, the vertical integration, the technology. It's all oriented around the most affordable, the most reliable power on the planet. And that is our brand, right? And now there's a whole nother kind of behind the scenes brand building exercise around building trust and communicating well to the customer and showing up in different markets in different ways because people are looking for different things and you have different customer bases where different things resonate with them. But the bar in the industry is not as high as it is in other industries where you have these really strong consumer brands. In the energy business, there are not a lot of these. And so we see this as a really exciting opportunity. And for folks who join our team, I think they're very excited to go build, the Costco of energy as we talk about it, right? That's never existed before. And we see it as a really fun and motivating opportunity.
I like that analogy. With regards to the energy industry as a whole, I mean, you sort of touched on solar, right? What are you, I mean, really most optimistic about in the next couple of years for the energy industry?
Yeah, I think that what's very encouraging is that the federal government, state governments, policymakers, regulators are realizing how important energy is and how we've got to cut the red tape. We've got to get out of the way of the free markets and let energy developers and technology companies do what they do best, which is innovate and build. And that, wasn't as important when we had low to no growth in demand, right? But that's changed, and we have incredibly high demand for electricity, in unprecedented high demand for electricity, largely driven by the build out of AI data centers, which are benefiting all of us every day. I'm sure you use these tools as much as I do. They're amazing, but they're incredibly power consuming. And so we have got to build more infrastructure. And the federal government, the state governments, the regulators, the policymakers are all realizing this. And I'm very optimistic that a lot of this red tape is going to get cut and we're going to be able to build more. By the way, yes, I am very optimistic that a lot of solar and storage is going to get built across the US because I think it's just going to be the low cost way to generate power. There's no other philosophical reason why batteries and solar should be deployed other than cost, right? It's all about cost. But other technologies will get built, and it's worth mentioning that energy is a geographically defined problem. So there are certain parts of the world and the country where there's not as much solar exposure, and so those places should not have as much solar, right? There are other parts of the country that have naturally occurring hydroelectric power. We should capture that, right? There are other places where geothermal is super effective. We have nuclear plants that we should absolutely use and turn back on and run. And we should, by the way, we should build new ones too. So I am an all of the above energy policy person. I think we should build all of these new these generation types and these storage types. They're all net good. The ones that are the lowest cost to build and to turn on and develop, those will win, in my opinion. And that's the business that we're in. But I'm extremely optimistic about the future of American energy.
Going off on sort of, artificial intelligence, right? Most Americans are, generally concerned that, oh, AI is going to take my job. But with regards to data centers, how worried should Americans really be about the infrastructure constraints that, data centers will place on our country in the next decade?
I don't think that we should be worried. I think that this is a very solvable problem, and we're seeing solutions all over the place. And I mean, the every buyer of compute is coming up with a power strategy, right? Microsoft is turning 3 Mile Island back on. Oracle is building a nuclear plant to power a gigawatt data center. Google is buying small modular reactors. There's probably a number of examples that I'm forgetting. Amazon bought a portfolio of nuclear from Talon Energy, if I remember correctly. So there's yes, there's a constraint on power, right? Power, the AI race has converged to power. But as I was mentioning earlier, the red tape is being cut for power developers to build more. And I am confident it's not that we don't have enough electricity or have enough generation. We actually do. We just don't use the system as efficiently as we can. And that's really where batteries come in, is they increase utilization, they increase capacity factors, it's called in the industry, and they make the system way more efficient, and they allow us to use our technology and our infrastructure more. And so I don't think we need to worry. I think these data centers will get built, they will get powered, we will come up with solutions, and it'll be great for the American economy.
That's great to hear. On a regulatory basis, how does Base really handle the regulatory risk that's associated with building that grid infrastructure?
Yeah, we don't necessarily see it as regulatory risk. It's more regulatory opportunity. I mean, I think that we want to help educate the policymakers and the regulators and work towards more market-driven solutions for energy technology development. So we want to cut the red tape, and we want generally if you could boil all of our kind of policy priorities and inclinations or motivations down to market-driven policy, right? We want price signals. We want where there is demand, we want to be able to meet it with supply. And we don't want to be slowed down by unnecessary red tape, basically. So our goal is to build more supply to meet the incoming demand and to help remove the barriers for building that supply, to put it simply.
Amazing. It's been incredible to see Base's growth within such a short period amount of time. That rapid scaling, right? Raising a $1 billion Series C from a $200 million Series B in less than 6 months. How would you say, how does scaling a company, from pre-seed to A differ from scaling from B to C?
Yeah. So it really comes down to the team scale. Like raising money is the bank account just gets bigger. So that's not that hard. The hard part is scaling the team and scaling the deployments, right? And going from installing one battery a day to doing 50 a day, like we're doing now, or over 50 a day. And when we raised our Series A, we were 10 people, and when we raised our Series C, we were 200 people. And so that happened in a span of 2 years, right? So that scaling is really difficult. I think that I had a lot of and still have a lot of learning to do with regards to getting the team on the same page and communicating well with that amount of people and making sure that everyone is aligned on the mission, the vision, the strategy, business planning, OKRs, priorities, focus. Those things are like all done the right way. When you're growing from 10 people to 200 people in 2 years, it's really easy to screw that up, and we definitely did in certain ways and have had to fix it and get better at that, and we're still iterating our way towards getting better there. When you're 10 people, you can all sit around a table. They call them the two pizza box teams at Amazon for a reason. Like you can sit around a table with a pizza box or two, and you can just like whiteboard stuff and get it done. And when you're 200 people, it doesn't work that way, and you have to get really good at communicating. And if you come into our office, you'll see there's like massive posters on every floor of the office that have our three company North Stars and our goals that are downstream of those North Stars for the year. And they're like posted in the office for everyone to see. And so the whole team is aligned on them. They know our mission, our vision, our strategy. They know our three North Stars. They know all the goals that are downstream of them. And then they know how the thing that they're working on ladder up into those goals, ladder up into those North Stars. And we talk about them at our monthly all hands. I talked about the monthly updates that I still write every month that I think gets the team very aligned. And so my job is really to communicate well with all the teams and make sure everyone is on the same page and marching in the same direction, and then help unblock teams along the way. But my job just keeps getting more fun because we get to do all kinds of new things, and we're bringing on incredible people. And working with those people is just unbelievably fun and energizing. And they give me leverage, and they could go do all kinds of interesting things that I get to work with them on. So it gets harder, it gets more complicated, but it gets so much more fun.
I'm really fond of that flat culture at base. I wanted to ask, I mean, relatively like the pre-seed, I mean, seed, Series A stages. Has there been anything, I mean, that nearly killed the company in the early days? Or, I mean, if so, what would that be?
Not really, because the only thing that can technically kill a company is a bankruptcy, and we've not come anywhere close to running out of money because all of the rounds have been preempted, and we've never raised because we needed capital, but because we've been able to capture value at the right time and bring on great partners that are long-term aligned with our mission, vision, and strategy. So I wish I had a fun Hollywood near-death story to tell you, but the true answer is no. Um, we definitely have had some hard, decisions or, I'll give you one example. So, the way that our business works is we have designed this kind of infrastructure asset around a fully custom vertically integrated product. But before we, set up the factory, design the product, build it ourselves, we wanted to get the business going with an off-the-shelf product. So the first, and still we're installing off-the-shelf products. We'll flip to our base design product this summer when our factory ramps in Austin. But for the first 2 years, 3 years of the company, we're installing this off-the-shelf product. Well, we had been designing what we called Gen 2, which was a kind of middle step in between off-the-shelf and fully custom. It was what's referred to as JDM, so joint design manufacturing. So we design it. It's manufactured by a third party. These third parties were in China. Okay, so we had been working on this for 18 months, 2 years, and April 2nd, 2025, Liberation Day, which wasn't all that liberating for us, hits. I'll never forget it. And we had spent the last 18, 24 months working on this thing. It was going to be manufactured in China, and the news hits, and it was like, oh well, the massive tariffs on all Chinese products. This immediately becomes uneconomic. What are we going to do? So we all get in a room and we spend the next 2 days basically in that room and trying to figure out, okay, can we move the factory to Vietnam? Can we, negotiate with these suppliers and figure this thing out? And what are we going to do? And we just kind of took a step back and we're like, guys, we have to cancel this program. Like we have to just completely cut it. We have to go right to step three, which is fully in-house designed and manufactured. Like we got to build a factory in Austin. We better go look for space right now, order the machines because it take a long time to get here. We better go hire a head of manufacturing and like, let's just go do it now. And we just like switched on a dime. We totally cut Gen 2. We went right to what we call Gen 3, which is technically Gen 2, but we call it Gen 3 because that's what we had always called it. We built a 30-person hardware team. We started, iterating on the design. We had already started a little bit, but we started focusing more on the design, and we completely switched all of our focus on the engineering side to this custom design product. That was a really hard decision. I can't say that almost killed the company because we weren't in a liquidity crunch at that point, but that was a big pivot that we made that turned out being, really good for the company.
That iteration speed is very impressive. I mean, beyond, I mean, some of the early struggles maybe, but are there any specific early memories that really stick out to you for which, I mean, dictated basic success and really excited you early on as a founder?
I mean, all the best memories are just with the team of just like the early days and solving hard problems. And I'll never forget the first successful backup of a base customer. We had, probably 5 batteries in the field, a small handful of units, prototype units. And at the time, I knew the name of every customer. I sold them all myself. I would knock on their door and have a conversation with them. And I won't share his full name, but the guy's name was Jason. And this was must have been January of 2024, before our public launch. It was a beta, and it was a Monday night. It was the college football national championship. I know that Michigan was in it because my co-founder went to Michigan. He does not care at all about football, but we had it on in the office, and we're all there. It was 9 o'clock. There's maybe 10 or 12 of us at the company at that time. Everyone's there, and I get a text from Jason, and it's like, oh my God, the power went out on my street. I'm sitting here watching the game like nothing happened. All my neighbors are asking me how my lights are still on. This is, effing awesome. And I was like, shaking, reading the text out loud to the whole office. And, everyone's cheering. And, it was a moment I'll never forget of like, holy crap, this actually works. This thing we built, like it really works, and we have a happy customer. So there's moments like that, right? And just things that moments I'll never forget. Liberation Day, honestly, that was a really, it's like a hard time that we had to go figure things out, or trips, with the team where just hard things, maybe certain things I can't share publicly that are just like challenges that are hard that we have to overcome. And I think that building a company is it's very personal, it's very interpersonal. You've got relationships and friendships and people who left great jobs at big companies to come join you on this mission. And the moments of the little wins with the team, those are the things that stick with me the most.
That's amazing. I want to touch on, I mean, on Georgetown, because I mean, Georgetown's not traditionally a technical institution. We don't have an engineering school. So, I mean, for our students who are, I mean, really ambitious, right? But about solving critical problems like yourself, but lack that solid technical background, how would you recommend they get involved, I mean, in today's most exciting technology companies?
So look, I studied psychology in college, so I was not a engineering student either. And the reality is, I mean, when I went to college, LLMs didn't exist. And your ability now to come up the curve on technology topics is never been greater, right? And so just be curious. And it just starts with asking good questions and trying to understand things. And I would encourage you to go spend time with technology companies. And look, there are certain startups out there, Base being one of them, where you're going to have a high density of exceptional technologists, but most startups just aren't going to be able to hold a candle to the talent density at a place like Tesla or SpaceX or Anduril or Palantir or OpenAI. And so if you get the chance to go work at any of those companies, even in a non-technical role, probably in a non-technical role, but just be around these technologists, take it and go for it and go ask questions, ask a ton of questions and take notes and follow up and research things. And we call it talking to the robots. Like, talk to the robots, ask them questions, try to understand these technologies. Like, there's never been a better time to be curious, never. And you do not need an engineering degree to understand these things. My co-founder Justin says this thing to new hires all the time at Base, which is, no one was born an engineer, right? Like, no one was born an engineer. And as someone who didn't study engineering but now spends all of his time around engineers and engineering, it's not that complicated. I would say the same thing about finance, by the way. Like, people get very intimidated by like, Wall Street and these firms and these internships, and it's not that complicated, guys. I'm telling you, like, it's just arithmetic and vocabulary, and engineering is the same thing. It's very simple math. and it's words that you don't know what they mean. And once you learn what they mean, you can like go decode these things and figure them out. And so just like work your butt off, be super curious, ask a ton of questions, go talk to the robots, pick apart these technologies, do whatever you can to surround yourself with technologists, just be around it, and you'll find it's a lot easier to pick up than you thought.
Love hearing that. I've actually tried some vibe coding myself. So, I mean, all the materials are out there, so anyone can really build on that foundation. I wanted to ask, I mean, was there anything that really surprised you when you first entered the energy business? Because I know it's high barriers to entry, right? So what was there anything that really surprised you there?
Um, it's less about the energy business and more about company building generally. I would say that when you think about starting a company, you kind of like daydream about solving business problems, right? You like think about all the business problems and you like, you make a business plan, you like write them down. Okay, these things are going to be hard and this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to mitigate these risks. And then when you actually get into it, what you realize is you're largely solving people problems. Like, yes, there are business problems, but you're mostly solving people problems. And we talked about it earlier, going from 10 people to 200 people in a very short amount of time. Like, yes, there are hard business problems you have to solve, but the people problems you have to solve in that growth trajectory are way harder than the business problems. And actually, being a psychology major comes in handy in situations like this, and understanding that, look, at the end of the day, you're dealing with humans, and humans have feelings, and they have emotions, and they respond good to some things and bad to other things. And how you talk to one person is not exactly how you want to talk to the other person. And understanding these interpersonal dynamics is a bigger part of company building than I expected. I should have known it going in. Uh, but that was very surprising.
Going off that, was there anything that you really spent more time on or that you had to learn that you didn't really expect to?
I mean, a lot of the engineering stuff has been a steep learning curve for me. Kind of electrical systems, distributed systems and software, um, batteries, inverters, power electronics. That stuff has been new and so fun to learn. And I'm really lucky to do it alongside some incredible technologists that have been very generous with their time and teaching me these things, and that's been a lot of fun. Um, energy is very local. And there is a lot of involvement in local politics and regulators, policymakers, cities, states, the federal government. There is just all kinds of involvement in the energy space, the public utility commissions, the National Electric Code, the AHJs, their permitting requirements. And I did not expect to have to become as much of an expert in those things as I've had to become. And it just comes with the territory. So maybe to answer your question specifically on energy, yeah, the regulatory environment and just the hyper kind of involvement, even in the deregulated areas, which is really a misnomer. It should be, it's more of it's the competitive areas. They're regulated. They're just competitive, not uncompetitive in the monopoly sense. But yeah, that has been the most surprising.
It's great to hear. What would you say is specifically overrated advice for founders?
Oh, that's a good one. Overrated advice for founders. Uh, I've always thought that like do things that don't scale advice is not very good because if you do that, then you'll never be able to scale. And it just depends, right? It's all relative, I think. And also like the the I think it's a tealism of like do thing like solve for, or maybe it's a Paul Graham thing like 1,000 true fans, or start with a really niche market and then go wide. Like we just didn't take that approach. We said, hey, we're going to build a mass market product and we're going to appeal to the masses, and that's worked really well for us. And then do things that don't scale. It's like, well, we started at one install a day and now we're doing 50 installs a day. And sure, there were things we did at one that we could never do at 50, but we got rid of those things pretty quick because if you want to go from one a day to 50 a day, I mean, we 15x the business last year. If you want to do that, like you just can't do, you definitionally cannot do the things that don't scale, right? So that only works for so long. And then when you really want to scale, like you must stop doing those things. So that I don't totally agree with. The 1,000 true fans thing, I think maybe works in software or in certain niche industries, but we built a mass market product from day one, and that's worked pretty well for us.
Incredible. So, I mean, really, as an ultimatum, if everything goes according to plan, what does Base's, I mean, sort of world dominating vision really look like?
Well, I think that we will become the largest energy technology developer in the world, and we will own the largest fleet of battery storage, certainly in the world, and probably the largest distributed solar fleet as well. And we'll look to take a step back. When it comes to power, there are four things, right? You got to make it, you got to move it because it's not always consumed where it's made. You got to store it because it's not always consumed when it's made, and you got to sell it, right? Today we just store it and we sell it. Well, eventually we're going to work on technology to make it and move it. That's kind of it when it comes to power. And so we want to do all four of those things. We want to build the modern technology company of the electric era. We want to make, move, store, and sell electricity. And we want to do that behind business models that work in regulated markets and deregulated markets in the United States, but also in other countries. So the ambition is to really build an energy technology platform company to make, move, store, and sell electricity across the US and the rest of the world. And you'll see us come out with new products, enter new markets, new business models to kind of see that vision through.
I'm excited to see what happens. Just to leave this on the fun note, what is one hobby or passion, I mean, you have outside of the energy industry that maybe people would be surprised by?
Surprised by, well, I love sports. I'm a competitor, and I love to play basketball. My wife is an incredible athlete. She was a D1 college athlete, and her and I love to compete. We play golf and tennis together, and she typically beats me. But competing with my wife is one of my favorite things to do, and I'm not working. Um, I'm trying to think if I have anything more niche and unexpected than that. That's pretty vanilla, but yeah, that's kind of it.
Well, we should hit some tennis balls sometime. Maybe if I come out to Austin, it'd be fun.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you, Zach. Really appreciate it. It's been awesome to dig into base and I mean, really learn more about your career trajectory. So, for all those that joined, thank you so much for sitting in our first panel of the Venture in the Capital series. Looking forward to our next conversation tomorrow with Phoebe Gates, who's the co-founder of FIA. So, take care, everyone, and thank you, Zach. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Spencer.